Greetings, squires and chommies.
I made this scroll thing and then I animated it to add some GIF visuals to this Afrikaans dub thing that we're making.
Isn't that fascinating?
And little did I know how many creative endeavors that I have undertaken throughout my life actually became useful in this whole ordeal. So within Abridged, you want to use the source material while differentiating yourself from the source material for a host of different reasons. And one of the ways I wanted to do that was add an animated scroll that appears on screen, giving you the now my in-universe names of the characters, or Afrikaans names in this sense. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I made the scroll in Photoshop and then how I later animated it simply in Capcut. Let's go. Now you're probably thinking, I could have just gone online and downloaded a scroll and then, cut my time in half. Well, I didn't want to. Okay, let's go. We'll start on Photoshop. Essentially, the reason why I first started learning Photoshop is that I wanted to get better at making thumbnails. Because all of my thumbnails up until that point, all those years ago on YouTube, I was simply using Windows Paint, which was not sufficient, let's be honest. Essentially, we're just going to make the rectangle and get it into a basic shape that we can work with. And then what I want to do is I want to round the edges by just using the pen tool. And with the pen tool, again, you want to make sure that it's on shape and not path. To select the pen tool, usually the shortcut is simply P, and then I just make a rounded edge. I simply made one side of it once I had the shape right that I wanted. Then I hold Control and press J, and then that copies the layer that we're on, which is essentially just the shape that we created. Then just say flip vertical. It's not perfect, but we'll edit it as we go along. And then once that's done, take both those two layers, and then I merge them. I click on one, hold Shift, press the other, and then I right click and say Merge Selection. Now I'm going to want to make the wooden insert and the wooden stick roller. I'm going to copy with Control J the layer that we made, which is the end curves of the scroll, and pretty much just use those, extend them out, and make them smaller. And then just put them one layer beneath everything so that it gives you the illusion that it's inside a scroll. Drag it down, now it's underneath, but now you can't see it. So you Control T, pull it out. So now you can see it, but now it has to be ever so slightly smaller because it's the roller. So then I just drag it smaller. Already you're seeing the illusion of, oh, this is a scroll, clearly. And then I copy that layer again, because now I want to make the inside roller stick. Press Control J to copy that again, and I make it a lot smaller than everything else, and then I pull it across to give you the illusion of the scroller now. So now you can see it's the same color, and you can't really see the difference between the outside roller and the inside roller. Double click on there, and then say color overlay, and just make it slightly darker so that you can see the difference between the two. And that already gives you the illusion of shadow and depth. So now I'm going to want to make the scroll that's been unraveled. It's going to make one solid rectangle with the rectangular shape tool deal. I'll edit it as I go, but as long as I have it at the shape that I want. So now I'm going to want to make the white paper canvas piece where one does the actual calligraphy or writing. Make sure it's centered. So now I'm going to want to create a golden border around the scroll itself. So I'm going to make another rectangle, just slightly go outside the border of the current one, and then pick the golden color that we have selected previously, and there you go. Already we have a border for our scroll. So usually the end of the scroll has some sort of hardened item in there, like a stick of some kind. It creates this curved edge towards the end, because it's the part that wraps around the scroll at the end. So we're going to use the pen tool again, and once we have the shape that we want, we're essentially just going to copy that shape and flip it again to the other side, so that it matches perfectly, as opposed to making a whole new shape, because that's a waste of bloody time. So now we're going to copy it, because now we want to use the same shape, to use the shape for the red part of the scroll. So now we have it selected, we're just going to make it a bit smaller, bring it in so that it lines up with the red ever so slightly. We can always mess with it as we go. So now we want to make it red, the same color as the scroll. So you can see the edges are not matching up, so we go warp, and we just pull in the edges. Happy days.
There might be a slight difference between each side, but no one's really going to pay attention to that, and if they are, they're nitpicking. So now I want to create the illusion that it's bent. So how we do that is we create light. So we're going to use the rectangular tool again, but a slightly lighter red. We want to take it all the way to the edge so that it lines up with the edge. There you go, the illusion of bending. Light and shadows create all the illusions that you want. So now I want to create a shadow between the scroll roller piece and where the scroll actually comes out. So how we do that, make a simple black rectangle at the separation. And you see, that's a bit too dark. And we'll pick soft light so that the black overlay creates a shadow on all the surfaces below it, which includes the canvas as well. So now we're going to want to create a gradient of shadow. So essentially we're going to go over the scroll again on the bottom side and make a darker color again. And then just map out the shape of the scroll with the darker red. Dark enough so that it differentiates between the darkness shadow we created on the scroll paper below. We're just going to make one more gradient so that's a bit more gradual. So now we're going to want to create the string or the rope that is tied on the very end of the scroll that you help untie and to pull out. So first we're going to create the actual knot piece, which I'm not too concerned about being, overtly perfect. No one's going to be inspecting it closely. Once we have the knot, we're going to use the pen tool again. As opposed to using the fill, we're going to make the fill transparent, and we're going to be using the stroke. And then we can mess with the thickness to create a very simple string. Once we're happy with that, go and create a knot on the other side again, then just a string piece that looks half frayed and half, yeah, there we go. Simple scroll string deal. I want to create more shadow on the actual wooden stick roller piece by itself. Press Ctrl J on that layer to clone it. And then flip it to the other side. And make sure it's zoomed in and we line it up perfectly. And there we go. We have shadow. And now we want to put like a paper or canvasy texture all over it. So I have a canvas texture. I got various canvas textures and I'll put them in the description if you ever want to make something like this. Now we just choose a way to blend it. I'm going to use darken color. And then all I do is change the opacity ever so slightly to get it the exact amount of canvasy look that we want to actually stick through. And then I'm going to bring another canvas texture in to use on the rest of the scroll that wasn't the parchment. And what we have to do here is we have to make sure it's lined up. Again, we use warp, Control T, then warp to map it out to the exact shape of the scroll piece. And once we've mapped it out nicely, a different overlay again, and we're going to use divide here. I don't want a lot of texture to poke through here. Only if you look kind of carefully, you can see some texture. And then we're just going to line it up a little bit better. And then apply the same concept to the rest of the bloody red bit. And there we go. We have our scroll done. Later on, if you want to add some calligraphy or some kind of looking writing, which is what I did, so that I could display each character in their Afrikaans version of their names on the scroll itself. I have so many different fonts that I've collected over the years. So in the description below, I'll put a bunch of different fonts that mimic calligraphy or fancy writing of some kind. I'm just going to be writing the character's name, Tinus van Skalkwyk, because that's Tanjiro's new name. But still, I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to look like it was actually painted on. So I've got a couple ink stains. Again, if you want some ink stains, I have them in the description below. And I'll drag those ink stains over and just put them in locations where I think there might be some ink blotches left over. But I have options. There's that one, and there's more of a wispy one, as if left a long streak behind. But also, for each scroll that I make for each individual character that I'm renaming, I'm giving them some individual looks to them. Some are more tattered, some are weathered, some are moldy. In this case, I'm going to show you something quickly. This is for a character I'm doing later, but I'll show you how I do it anyways. I want to have a hole through it, so I'm going to go to the layer where the canvas is, and I'm going to use my pen tool, this time on path and not shape. I'm going to map out the area that I want to actually choose out. Hold Control, press that button, and there we go. It's gone now. Now we have a hole right through it. Now I'm not going to keep this look for this one. That's just an idea of how we do things like that. Oh shit, important. Do a version of the scroll where the bottom unraveled piece is not there. Have a rolled up version. It's very important. So I messed with sound effects to get the best sound that I wanted for a scroll, and I used like actual maps being unraveled and things like that. It just didn't sound right, but I kept having this idea in mind of how it's supposed to sound. And then I realized I was getting the sound how Naruto's scrolls sound when they unravel. And it just sounds like they're unraveling like a tent. So what I do is I bring in the scroll and then I make sure the unraveled scroll and the scroll rolled up, they are the exact same PNG size. The rolled up version and the unraveled version have to be the same, and I'll show you why. Just make it a bit smaller, put it in the corner. And we're going to gauge how long it'll be before it unrolls. So we're just going to use an animation. There's various animations you can use. I just like the wiper. It comes on screen at like an angle. Boom. I'm going to eyeball it as to where I'd like to cut. And then I grab the unraveled scroll and then I drag it over the image that I cut. It's going to ask, do you want to replace this? You say yes. Because now you'll see you have that scroll and the unraveled scroll. Because I left the canvas size on both the images exactly the same. That helps a great deal. But now you can see it's not coming out smoothly. It's just there and it's there. I want to... So I'm going to show you how I do that using the masking tool in Capcut. So just pretend I explained this next bit in the most coherent and understandable way. I'll try not to confuse you. You're going to make use of the masking tool seen here and scaling, or in other words, just moving it from side to side. So we are going to make 2 anchor points or nodes, or just 2 points to tell the thing what to do. So 1 point to cut off the end because that part must be visible to show the end of the scroll, and then the other point showing it in its entirety. And the further apart the points or nodes or whatever, the slower the animation, and the closer they are, the faster, obviously. And after you've made your 2 points in the mask, it'll appear on your timeline as 2 little white dots. So you're going to match those exact dots, but now using the scale to kind of move it from side to side to give you the illusion of unraveling. God, I hope that made sense. So the first point you make in the scale, you'll have the end of the scroll that you've masked all the way against the rolled up scroll, and then at the next node in the mask where it completely unravels, you will then move using the scale tool the scroll the entire way out. Make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. And then we just chuck in some cool sound effects and we have it.
Linus.
It's klaar, boetie. Remember, Jommies, be a creative nomad. Try everything. Alright, goodbye.